Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Charity Charge Nonprofit Spotlight Series. My name is Matt, and at Charity Charge, our mission is to power yours. Outside of this podcast and blog series, we do that through equitable access to financial tools and services, such as our credit card and gift card programs. If any of that sounds like it would be helpful to your organization, please do reach out to us. We are here for you. And today I am joined by the president and CEO of TechTown, Ned Stabler. Ned, thank you for being with us today. How are you?
I'm good, Matt. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Really appreciate your time and looking forward to chatting with you. Um, and really excited to talk about TechTown and its mission. Before I do that, though, would you walk us through a little bit, your background, what
Hmm.
got you into the nonprofit space and kind of set you on this path that you're on today?
Yeah, it's a good question because I didn't start out like many people. I didn't start out saying I know I'm going to go into this nonprofit space, but the super long story is I'm a native Detroiter, born and raised in Detroit Public Schools. Went through K-12 here in Detroit, and then like a lot of Detroiters, left for a long time. Was always intended to go into some sort of public service, but not necessarily the nonprofit space. But in college decided to take a little detour and go into the business world for a couple years. And as every 20-year-old will tell you, I'll just do this for a couple years. I'll figure out how the whole world works, and then I'll go back to what I was doing. And so 10 years later, I woke up. I was living in London and working for a global money center investment bank, and decided, aha, that's a pretty far from what I was planning on doing. And so I ended up leaving the bank, going back to grad school. And in doing so, I learned about this thing called economic development and moved back to Michigan in 2005 after finishing my master's. And I'd written my dissertation on state level economic development policy, what states were doing in response essentially to globalization at that time. And I had used Michigan as a model. So I took a job at the state's economic development agency, worked there for 5 years. And then about 15 years ago, I got a call from the president of Wayne State University, who said, I want you to come and do economic development for the university in Detroit. And I said, what's economic development for a university? I remember him saying, I don't know. Let's figure it out. And I thought, now that's the kind of job I want. The rest, as they say, is history. I've been here 15 years and really enjoying the platform.
I appreciate that background. And it is funny, a lot of nonprofit leaders we talk to do say similar thing that it was never planned. And it's pretty amazing that you went across the pond and back here to Detroit and
Yeah.
doing great work for the community there. Tell me a little bit about TechTown, its mission, and how that mission has kind of evolved since your involvement with it began.
So TechTown is the entrepreneurial support organization, business incubator, accelerator, whatever you want to call it, affiliated with Wayne State University, which is a big public research university right here in the city of Detroit. But it is a separate 501(c)(3). So we work with folks from the university, but also anyone across sort of the region. And we've been around for more than 20 years. Originally founded to do tech commercialization out of the university and a related health system. But about a dozen years or so, we expanded our services to help any kind of business. So, coffee shop, restaurant, now home based business, whatever it is, we're going to help you to sort of set that business up and get going. What we say is our mission is to break cycles of intergenerational poverty, generate equitable community wealth here in Detroit through entrepreneurship. So that's the mission that we stay focused on. Programming, all of that incubation and acceleration stuff is just a means to the end of working towards that equitable community growth.
Wonderful. That's great that it has really expanded to help businesses of all sizes and types. Access to capital is often cited, as one of the biggest barriers for small business owners. How is TechTown working to address that challenge, particularly for underrepresented founders in the Detroit area?
Sure. And don't get me wrong. You ask any founder, what's your number one challenge? They'll always tell you capital. And sure, I mean, don't get me wrong, money solves a lot of problems. Doesn't solve all your problems, but it does. We often find that while every entrepreneur will tell you money is what they need, it's not always what they need. Sometimes they need, the comfort of having money, the things that money can buy, things like that. So we tend to but you asked me, how are we helping people on the money, and especially for underserved founders? Now, that's a really important question because we're in Detroit. Detroit is a city that is 76% black. It is about 92% non-white, found people of color in general. And if you look sort of economically at those households, that black and brown households have a net worth of generally around $20,000 across the country, whereas white households have a net worth closer to $200,000. So if you or I are going to start a business, and my wife and I started a business 14, 15 years ago, and we came out of our pocket. If you need $10, $15,000 startup expenses, you can do that. But if your net worth is $10,000 or zero or $20,000, you're not doing that, right? And so a lot of times people in organizations like ours, they start with, we're going to make an investment. I'm going to use a loan, grant, sorry, loan, equity, something that's a traditional investment structure. And you think, yeah, of course we are, because we're doing it for-profit businesses. But often the fact that underserved folks can't come out of their pocket for that first $10,000, $20,000 like other folks can, mean they never get to the point where an investment really makes sense. So the first way that we do that is through grant programs. We really focus on non-dilutive funding. Like, how are we going to get you that five, 10, $20,000 to get you your product or service to the point where we can really figure out if there's a there, where now we're talking about traditional bank financing or CDFI financing or an angel investor or pre-seed fund or venture investor, but really getting that first 20 and often up to $50,000 of non-dilutive funding to help folks figure out if there really is a product that or service that and business model that's going to work for them.
Wonderful. That sounds pretty fantastic. Does the organization itself fundraise for grant purposes, or is it more helping small business find grants outside of your foundation or
Well,
of
that's
your
the next
organization?
piece is then how do we get paid? How do we get funded? How do we stay in business and so we can make sure we support those entrepreneurs? So, yes, we've got to go out and fundraise ourselves, and it's a very difficult climate right now. Historically, we have been growing and growing. We were about a $4 million operation a dozen years ago. This year, we started our year with a budget of closer to $18 million. And we've done that mostly through philanthropic support. I mean, so many folks recognize that, if we're going to be building out a prosperous community here, that we need small businesses, not only because it is a really good way to build equitable community wealth. That is, people can, owning a business is generally, if you can do it well, a way to generate money, but also because it provides amenities in a community, right? No one wants to live in a neighborhood that doesn't have a coffee shop, a dry cleaner, a restaurant, a bar, whatever it is, right? Those are the things that make life really wonderful, and one of the things that's been missing in Detroit. So philanthropy has really been willing to support a lot of our work because they know that we got to go block by block to rebuild these communities. And then, the state government was a funder early on. In the last 7 or 8 years, they've really not been. But the federal government stepped up for many years. And coming into this year, about 40% of our budget was federal. Unfortunately, on January 23rd, that all kind of stopped for a little while. And we have lost some federal funding over the course of the year. We've had to go through some layoffs, but we've managed to retool and resize. And, we've always kept an eye on how do we continue to provide services to our clients. That's our first way. So we're really, lean and efficient. Our overhead rates are really low because we're doing everything we can to make sure that our entrepreneurs and our clients are getting served.
Wonderful. No, that's definitely a best practice is to stay true to the mission. You mentioned, the biggest challenge for business owners is capital. A huge challenge for nonprofits is obviously funding.
Yeah.
What other challenges come to mind that nonprofit or that your nonprofit faces, and how have you tackled those?
Well, I would say, I think every nonprofit, and if you're watching this and you're running a nonprofit, you know what I'm talking about is that, the private sector pays more, right? Because we're trying to keep our overhead low. We're always scrapping for dollars. It's one of my sort of pet peeves when people say that we should run your nonprofit more like a for-profit business. Come on, man. I've worked in for-profit businesses. Those guys, for-profit businesses are not lean at all. I mean, they're throwing $1 million parties and people are flying all over the place and there's, blah, 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 blah. Trust me, nonprofits far more efficient than for-profits. And part of it is salaries, right? So we struggle to hire people, and retain talent because of that. And you asked, how do we, what do we do because of that? Well, the answer is culture. We recruit for culture, we hire for culture, and then we try to maintain it. And we practice what we preach. So, I've had numerous people over the years tell me that they stayed here because we have a very generous maternity leave policy, right? And family leave policy. Like, we're going to make sure that we're really committed to the entire family and supporting folks. We are pound wise, but not penny foolish, if that makes sense. You always say people are penny wise and pound foolish. So we're going to provide snacks and that kind of stuff to make the place a nice place to be, and people want to be here. We call them premium snacks. That's our joke. All right, people are like, "Wow, you guys have free coffee and drinks and this and that and snack." Yeah, we do, but it doesn't really cost that much. If it cost me $5 grand or $10 grand a year to provide, trail mix and yogurts to the team, pay somebody $10,000 a year more. It's actually a really good investment in our people. Trust me, the Googles of the world that are doing that, they're not doing it as a loss leader. Or as a loser, like they know what they're doing. So we try to be really thoughtful with the culture and with the benefits, just so that people are, they get that we can't pay them as much as they might make in the private sector. And then, of course, we focus on the mission. So the people that are here are really committed to it. They get what we're doing, and we try to remind them all the time of the mission. And I'm sure you've heard the parable of the people building cathedrals. Who's happier, the bricklayer, the stained glass maker, or the guy building a cathedral? The person building the cathedral, he might be laying bricks and putting up stained glass, but he understands why he's doing it, and that's why he's a lot more productive and a lot happier.
Absolutely. No, it is very important to find individuals that are mission aligned and then take care of those individuals. No, I think that's fantastic. Yeah. Does TechTown rely on volunteers at all?
Not a ton, not a ton. Most of the work that we do, we have some folks. So we for a couple of things. One, our board. I mean, our board is volunteers. In fact, they pay for the pleasure of being on our board, right? There's a not pay, but they contribute. They make donations. But then one of the things that we find really separates us from a lot of other places. We've been around a long time. We've developed a network that we call our professional services network. And we run a couple of programs with them. One is called Ask an Expert, and another is really in our professional services network. We refer out clients where we've got people that know marketing or merchandising or legal work or accounting or whatnot, that small businesses need that we can refer to. And some will do it pro bono, some will do it pro bono, because they do want to give back. So some of it is volunteering, some of it is just, public service. But that's the area we do. They aren't delivering our programming generally. That is usually people that are on staff, but they certainly provide a lot of support to our entrepreneurs.
Excellent. And when it comes to your board, how do you engage them and keep them, accountable for their roles as well as sharing the impact that they're making as board members?
Yeah, that's a real challenge for every nonprofit. I'm on a bunch of nonprofit boards. I manage this one here, and I'm always looking for best practices. Like, where can I steal an idea from this board or the other? And every board is different. So we try to make them understand the mission. At every board meeting, we bring in clients so they can see and touch and talk to the actual entrepreneurs. We try to do events using our clients' businesses all the time, especially a restaurant or a bar or a coffee shop. So we'll go there and have an event or a board meeting or something like that, so that people can touch it and feel it a little bit more. And those are the usual things. I mean, we don't have any magic, so hopefully one of your listeners is going to see this, email me and say, what you should do. I've got this great board engagement technique that always works. One thing we're just piloting now is that I send a regular email to my board. Hey, board, just hear the updates. We raised some money. We did this program. Come to these events. But we're sticking in at the end. Here's one easy way with a single click you can share what's happening here to your LinkedIn friends or something, things like that, followers, with an easy one click way to share our social content, things like that.
Wonderful. Yeah, thank you for that. One thing that stood out to me, you'd mentioned that nonprofits are very efficient as opposed to for profits, in some respects, and it sounds like yours is very much so, very very efficient in your operations. What tools or I would say softwares, like just getting a little specific here, kind of help keep everyone on track and communication, and just talking about the back end office, administrative side of the organization. What comes to mind when I ask you about that are helpful to your organization's operations?
What comes to mind, first of all, is, oh my Lord, if you don't pay attention to it, your tech stack will have like 9 different products in it after a year, because someone's like, oh, we should start using Trello for this thing. Let's start using Slack. You know what? I'm just going to use Excel. I'll use Monday and throw this in my CRM. And so occasionally we do an audit of that and realize we've got a whole bunch of stuff going on. And trying to be efficient, we recognize that we actually have an enterprise CRM that we end up paying for a lot of the stuff, but people don't know. So we're literally just this week relaunched our CRM and are doing a whole bunch of training. We use Zoho, which will hopefully get rid of the fact that one of my teams was using Monday for their support. And Zoho, of course, has modules where you can send out email campaigns. So we stopped using MailChimp. They have a scheduling one so we can stop using Acuity. Nothing wrong with these products. We've been using them for different specific purposes over the years. But you don't need Eventbrite when Zoho has its own ticketing platform that integrates directly so that you can then follow up with those folks with an email that and you don't have to import everything into from Eventbrite into MailChimp into whatever. So, I'm a big fan of that to the extent that you can use it. There is no magic bullet, obviously. And I will not disagree that specific software platforms, a software platform designed for a single use is going to be better, right? MailChimp is going to be better than Zoho's mail campaigns or, Trello's project manager is going to be better. But to the extent you can get them all in one place so that your data and reporting is easier, the better off you are. So we're trying to consolidate from 10 or 12 different parts of our tech stack to one, maybe two or three if we need to.
Excellent. Thank you for those recommendations. And yeah, it really does come down to the needs of the nonprofit. But I think a best practice is to kind of yeah, just keep in mind that there are some options that couple a lot of different needs into one.
I mean, ultimately, what does a nonprofit need to do? I mean, if you want to stay, you want to serve your customers, and you want to keep afloat. And to do that, you need to be able to tell your story and have the value chain, the value prop out to your potential funders, to politicians, the media, your clients, so they know about you. And more easily you can do that, the better off you are. And so having a CRM that everybody's using is great. The next step, I work in an ecosystem with like 7 or 8 other players that do this work. So this is a project we're about to embark on. If I can find a funder for it, which I think I will, hopefully, is say, great, I use Zoho. I know one of my other peers use Salesforce. Okay, you use Monday. Let's put a data layer on top of all that. Let's get a data lake where we can securely pull up what you have mapped out for us that you're comfortable with so that we can see everybody in the ecosystem. We're working with 300 companies right now. 50 of them are AI companies, 50 of them are med tech companies, there's 30 mobility companies, whatever it is. But we can see that data. We can talk about, oh, how many are we overlapping on? Can we refer them at the right time? And then hopefully our funders will say, oh, this is what the ecosystem looks like. This is what's missing. This is who's really doing the work. Because of those 300, 200 of them are at TechTown and only 50 are over here, things like that. And they can make funding decisions more efficiently and effectively and get resources where they're needed on a more efficient basis.
Wonderful. No, that is very exciting to hear. Now, Ned, I just really want to thank you for your time and insights here. How can our listeners best support your work and the work of TechTown?
Well, I will tell you, we are a 501c3, techdowndetroit.org. There's a big donate link on there, I'm sure. We have lots of great events. I know there are going to be folks all over the country, the world that might hear this. I'll tell you this, come to Detroit. I can tell you till I'm blue in the face that Detroit is a really cool place and there's an emerging tech scene, but also a really awesome restaurant scene and art scene that's happening here. You will not believe me until you come here. And then when you do, you will never want to leave. You'll want to come back over and over again. And I'll tell you, I'll be your personal concierge. Ned at techdowndetroit.org. Shoot me a note. I will happily tell you, eat here, go to this museum, go to this park, walk on the world class riverfront that we've built. Come and check it out. So that's honestly, you want to support our work, come to Detroit, and it's mutually beneficial because you're going to love it.
Excellent. Well, thank you. I'll take that as a personal invitation as well. And
Please do.
Charity Charge will come to Detroit and you can show us around. Thank you so much again, Ned. You've offered some great insights, and I appreciate you sharing your story and the great work that TechTown is doing. And we wish you the best of luck, in your future endeavors. Thank you again.
Thanks, Matt. Real pleasure to be here.